Constitution. So we'll today see about this, and we'll see a few things. And under which article of the Constitution does this come?
244.
44 2. Okay. So when you talk about this, this is what it comes to. So you remember this. This is so the as far as its application is concerned, it applies to the 4 states of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram. Right? Now, why do you think the Constitution, the makers of the Constitution, think it necessary to provide a separate schedule for these 4 states? Right? That should be the first obvious question that should come in our minds, because it also caters to scheduled tribes. It also caters to the specific developmental needs of scheduled tribes, right? Then why a separate schedule? Why a separate schedule to the Constitution, right? So let's first understand this. So far, when we studied 5th schedule, it talked about certain, almost all tribes which have certain common features among them. Though every tribe is unique in their own cultural and way of life, still there are some common aspects related to the development, right? But the states, these states have had a different historical background when it comes to tribes. And why that's so? When we say that exclusion, is the criteria for identifying whether a certain group of people is a tribe or not. One of the criteria, of course, but important. But what if in a particular given territory or a state, if 90% of that population is tribal, then how do you define exclusion? So there could be a challenge there. So that's one, because most of these regions are almost, of course, Assam has a very mixed population, but the others, these states have almost 90 to 95, 97% tribal population. Another important thing is that they have had a different cultural history and history of governance governing their lives over a period of many centuries, different than the rest of the tribes in the rest of the country. And that necessitated the need for having a separate schedule, because it talks about slightly different administrative and development mechanism for these regions. Okay. So this application, if you see this schedule 6, you will find that the application is actually given in the schedule in the beginning itself. Right. So you will when you go through that, just remember that these paras are important from your pre point of view. Okay. Now let us will not go para wise. We'll try to cover the concept, and then you can go through the paras separately. Schedule 6 is a longer schedule, much longer than schedule 5. So what does it talk about? These regions have had a different historical background when it comes to their social governance or governing their own affairs, in their own region, and to cater to their specific requirements. This schedule was brought into the constitution. As we've already seen in the Nehruvian model of social development. Yesterday, we saw how it talked about gradual development, gradual integration, gradual and slow integration, right? It talked about how gradually health and educational facilities should be provided to the tribes, and then of course economic development, infrastructural development, right? But at the same time, it also talked about a very important aspect, which is what? Protection of, while doing all these things, protection of culture, and their way of life, right? And also basically the governance. This model also talks about an idea of self-governance. Okay, self-governance. We'll talk about self-governance a lot. And from this philosophy comes the sixth schedule. So it talks about two types of regions within that. So all these states, the governors of these states are supposed to identify the areas which have been traditionally ruled by tribal councils. So these areas have had a tradition of having a council known by different names in their different regions, but a group of people who would carry out the governance of that region, and they were called tribal councils. Ideally, if certain regions have been governed by tribal councils, it is a good idea to let them function like that, instead of simply saying, okay, from today you have no authority, your authority or your governance is no governance, or it's gone, and now we will put officials and different system in place, and that will govern. So that doesn't go well with this philosophy, right? And hence it was felt necessary and important to ensure that the systems that they had developed over the centuries are preserved, protected, but they are also made functional and legitimized, because they were all informal. So they have to be made formal, and that's why this provision was provided in the constitution, giving them a constitutional status, right? So the councils became so-called informal tribal councils. Now took a legal shape. So this talks about two types of areas which are called autonomous districts. Okay, so autonomous districts are to be identified. Okay, so for example, if there is a state of Assam, for example, if this is a state of Assam, and if they find that there are certain this area was actually being this particular area was actually being governed by a tribal council earlier. So what would they do? They would define this governor of the state would define this territory and would declare this as an autonomous district, for example. Okay, there could be another autonomous district here if that region had been traditionally being governed by an informal tribal council, right? So this is one unit of governance. The other unit of governance is within this is autonomous regions. Okay, now autonomous regions meaning within this larger autonomous district, if there are more than one tribes, for example, if there is only one single tribe residing in this area, then there is no requirement of having separate regional autonomous regions within it. But for example, there is a specific tribe that lives in this area, which is different than the tribe that lives in this area. Okay, it's a different tribe, and in this area, in this pocket, you have a different tribe living, and they have their own ways of governing themselves. So for that specific region, then there will be a tribe autonomous region. So these two entities, you should try and just understand why they are there. Okay. So autonomous regions are smaller regions within autonomous districts. Why is that? Why are they required? They because there are tribes within the different tribes within the autonomous district, and those tribes have been governing themselves separately by way of their own tribal councils. So there will be autonomous regions. Okay. So this is the important distinction that you have to understand. So what is the governance structure? The governance structure is again very simple once you are able to understand it. The governance structure is that for every such district, and what are they, where are they given? They are given in a within the, I'll tell you where they're given, but you will understand where they're defined. They are defined in a schedule attached to this schedule, right? It's called parts. Whenever there is a list, schedule to a constitution is itself a detailed list of something, right? Or detailed list of separate provisions. But if there is a need to add another list to the schedule, then that list is added in terms of parts. Okay, so there are parts given under paras in which these autonomous districts are defined. Okay, so it is the governor of the state. What does the governor do? Identification and now this identification is of course can be done because by the governor, but however it has been actually done already, and there isn't much addition to that, creation of new, because they are already defined in that in this schedule itself. But what does it primarily do is it can modify the boundaries of it, it can add some regions to it, it can remove certain regions from it, it can change its boundaries. We've already seen that when it comes to the fifth schedule. But one important difference is when it came to the fifth schedule, it was the president who was doing it by an order of the president, right? Presidential order bolte hain usko, right? You have heard this term by order of the president in other articles also. Can you remember any article? By the order of the president, order, president will define, president will notify by the order of the president.
Maybe Article 200
We had studied
to give assent
about
to bill.
Article 341. So where the president will, by an order, notify the list of scheduled caste, for example, or the president by an order will notify that thing. So that kind of order, the president issues orders of that kind, and this is a similar kind of order that the president will issue in fifth schedule. Here it is governor. Okay. Now the governance mechanism that for every autonomous district there will be an autonomous district council. Okay, autonomous district council will be there. हर एक इसके लिए एक रहेगी. And within this, if there are autonomous regions, there will be autonomous regional council. Okay. So there's autonomous regional, autonomous district councils and autonomous regional councils are the basic units of governance in these regions, right? So that is something that we need to understand. Now these councils, let us understand the structure of these. So the autonomous district councils, they these councils are basically made for the first time. When they were made, they replaced the then existing tribal councils, right? And they had their own way of elections. But when they were included in the fifth schedule, a separate way of electing them was also brought in place. What does it mean? कि इनका जो इलेक्शन पहले इनफॉर्मली होता था ट्राइबल काउंसिल का, अब जब ऑटोनॉमस डिस्ट्रिक्ट काउंसिल को डिफाइन कर दिया गया, तो उसके बाद उसका एक इलेक्शन का प्रोसेस भी डिफाइन किया. तो who does that? It is the governor of the state who does all these uh, notifications of the process of election, who is who can contest elections to this, who are the voters for this. That is decided by the governor. So autonomous district council can have 30 members. Okay, and these members are elected by the people in that region, right? Among them, among these 40, 4 members are nominated by governor. Okay. Similarly, there will be autonomous regional councils for every region, right? And these councils will also have elected and nominated people, right? These are smaller unit, but wherever they exist, they have most of the authority with them. We'll see what areas they govern. Okay. So what do they do? The powers of the district councils, autonomous district councils, mainly the regional councils do almost everything that is related to the governance of these areas. Specific things that they do is allotment, occupation, and use of land. They deal with what? The allotment, occupation, or use of land other than reserved forest. Okay? Reserved forest को छोड़कर जो भी land उस region में है, you know, here we, for example, if there is all the land here, their allotment, their use, everything is governed by the autonomous district council of that district. Except the forest, reserve forest. You know what is a reserve forest? Huh?
Defined by the government of India.
Yeah, आया है क्या? Okay. So forest, there are different types of forests, but as far as the Conservation of Forest Act is concerned, there is a Conservation of Forest Act of 1980. Now this act defines certain types of forests. So one among them is reserve forest. I will just go by that. Protected forest. So protected forest is a type of forest which is not very dense, which is not defined as reserved forest, where the canopy cover is thinner, right? And that is why it is called protected forest. But from the point of view of the people in the protected forest areas, grazing of animals and collection of firewood or collection of minor forest produce is allowed. So particularly grazing is allowed here. Grazing and firewood collection is allowed. And then the next category of forest is reserved forest. Reserve forests are actually better forests with good tree cover, good tree density. And in these forests, grazing and collection of firewood is generally not permissible. grazing and firewood is not permissible, right? So these are the reserved forests. So except the reserved forest, they can govern all the other forests and other open lands also. Then of course, then there are sanctuaries. Sanctuary is another type of forest, which is of course part of reserve forest, that is declared as sanctuary from the point of view of protection of wildlife. So for protection of wildlife and forest. So here there'll be little more restrictions than this. So restrictions are increasing now. So this will have more restrictions than reserved forest. And then some of the areas within the reserved forest, of course, are also marked as national park areas. And national park areas, they have the maximum amount of restrictions as far as the use of the forest land and forest is concerned. Right? Generally, the tiger reserves are, most of them are national parks, but there can be national parks for other reasons also. So among these, as you go down here, the amount of restrictions of movement and use will increase. So these tribal councils, the ADC, the autonomous district councils, will have authority to, you can simply note down in short, allotment, occupation, use of land other than the reserved forest. So they can decide in which area agriculture will be done, in which area grazing can be done, in which area different civic amenities can be built. That decision they take. They also do management of any forest. Management of forest includes many things, including the use of the minor forest produce of that area. You know what is a minor forest produce?
Timber and all collection.
So there are two types of forest produce: minor forest produce and major forest produce. So minor forest produce are generally now they are defined. Okay, they are defined by the notification of the government. The respective governments decide which are the minor forest produce. These are the things, that valuable things that you get from forest. So such as leaves, fruits, right? There can be fruits. A lot of leaves are collected from forest. Wood is collected. Bamboo again is brought in minor forest produce now these days, right? These are all minor forest produce. So for example, you might have heard of mahua. They collect mahua, they sell it. They collect different types of medicinal plants, different types of fruits and nuts from the forest. They are all or tendu patta leaves, which are used for different purposes, right? They're all minor forest produce, minor. So most of the tribes and people living in the forest area have rights over the minor forest produce. And then there are certain then major forest produce. Major forest produce such as timber, for example, teak wood or wood, felling of trees. The wood itself, is not, it is a major forest produce, and hence people are not allowed. Only major forest produce are handled by the forest department. Okay, so even here it could be honey, for example, a minor forest produce. So outside the reserved areas, reserved forests, they can plan the forest produce also. Then use of canal water. If there is a canal or a dam inside that territory, then it's used for agriculture. that is also governed by these councils. The regulation of practice of zoom cultivation. You know, have you heard of zoom cultivation? Zoom
Slash
cultivation
and
सुना है आप
burn.
लोगों ने? No. So zoom cultivation is a type of cultivation which is being carried on by large number of tribes, not here. It was very common among the many tribal groups in central India also. Of course, we are now talking about Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram. But zoom cultivation was practiced in central and eastern and southern Indian regions also by certain